The 6 educators accused of abusing students at Everhart Elementary School in Longview were in the courtroom today. Cassandra James and Linda Lister both face 17 charges in total. The defense is asking for their trials to be handled separately. But as KLTV7's Alex Weister tells us, today the judge in these cases said he needs more time to make a decision.
The defense for Cassandra James led the motion of severance discussion in court today. Attorneys for co-defendant Linda Lister's case agreed, saying a conflict in the defense could potentially lead to a mistrial.
I can tell you if the defense of Ms. Lister is that her hands are clean necessarily by having reported this instance of misconduct to Ms. James, that creates an inherent conflict between these two co-defendants that is irreconcilable.
In rebuttal, the state argued Lister being the assistant principal and James being principal shouldn't matter in the prosecution of these cases.
Our position is they were the principal and basically assistant principal of the school. They knew what was happening. They created the atmosphere for that to happen in, and we have video evidence we believe to show that. And both of them were there in that video, and both of them acted in that video. And based on that evidence, we'd like to move forward in this case together.
These cases come after a $2.5 million settlement was reached with the families of the 11 students involved back in 2022. Paula Dixon and Cecilia Gregg both were given 8 years for their involvement in the same cases of abuse. Judge Novi has given each side a week to come forward with the documents for and against trying the two separately. Alex Weister, KLTV7 News.
And the next hearing for James and Lister is set to happen November 6th.